You could see it. It was visual. Her pain was visual. The beating was visual. The swollen eyes, the mouth, the dried blood on her lips, everything was visual. Everything was right there for someone to be, to look at and say, you would hope would put their arms around them and say, what can we do to help? But it was absolutely different. It was, this is your fault. They did blame her, and it was a whole lot of, hide this, don't talk about it sort of stuff. And yet everyone knew it was going on.
Here Is Now is a podcast about family violence survivors, where we share our truth, our stories. While it takes a village to raise a child, it also takes a village to kill one through neglect. The time is over for hiding our pain. Instead, it's time to share our stories, to speak up, to seek help. It's time to turn bystanders into heroes and equip them to bring healing and change for the next generation. It is time for us to open our eyes and our mouths, speak up for the victims who otherwise cannot speak for themselves. I am Marie Young, your host, and this is Hear Us Now. Welcome to the Hear Us Now podcast. My name is Marie Young, your host, and my special guest is Lima Hansen. Lima Hansen was born in Samoa, raised in South Auckland, and returned from living in Indonesia after 7.5 years. She's married with 3 beautiful children. Lima is a published author, international speaker, and also works as a public servant. Since publishing her book, Grace Brought Me Here, Lima has found herself speaking to a variety of different audiences across the globe on different platforms addressing domestic violence, mental health, and sexual abuse. Lima's journey has brought her full circle with her culture. Something she once turned her back on now has become part of her identity that she embraces boldly. Lima's key message is learn to value the power of your story. Malo soifua, and welcome, Lima.
Mua tātou whaafetai i le atua mo nei aso, au te whaatalofa atu i lo susunga Marie Young, au te whaatalofa atu fo'i i le awhia ua tātou whaatasi, whaafetai mo le awanoa, ua e tuuina mai mo au e whaasoa ai le mata upu i le nei tai au. O lo ingoa o lo Lima Hansen, ngā u whanau i le nuu o Whaleasi. You're welcome. So I was born in Samoa, in Whaleasi'u, raised in South Auckland. I've been living abroad in Indonesia for 7.5 years, and I've just recently returned back to New Zealand. I've been here for just over a year now. With the way things have changed, we made a decision it was time to come back home, come back to New Zealand.
Great, welcome back. It's great to have you back in Aotearoa, and a huge welcome. And whawhtai vi ia le tua nei tai au fōu, whawhtai fo i le whaavanoina fo i o lo taimi, i tā leni fo i a mese le tautinonga ma tautia o le tua i lo soifua. So ma lo soifua ma langi mama, and welcome. So Our first question was, how did you realize that family violence was happening to you?
Family violence happening to me. Look, I'll be honest with you. I think it's safe to say that when I was younger and when all these things were happening around us, family violence was not something that was talked about. Even to use the word family violence was not something we ever heard growing up. You'd hear things like, it's a beating, it's a hiding. You hear those sort of things, but they were made kind of a normal part of my childhood. Those words and those situations were just a normal thing. So I think it took me having to leave home. It took me being older, having to understand and realize actually that was family violence, what I grew up in. But to be honest, growing up in it, it was not considered family violence. It was just considered this is just normal life, growing up in this household, growing up as Pacific Islanders, new to the area, new to New Zealand. And it was just really wasn't something seen as family violence, and I don't think anyone back then would have ever used that word as violence. They would have just said that this is pretty much how you manage a household. So when I realised it happening to me, it would have had to been when I was older and when I got to see and experience something different and was exposed to something different. It wasn't until then that I looked at this new thing, this different thing, and compared it to what I was in and compared it to what I had run from, where I realised, okay, this is different. That what I had considered normal is different. So when I did finally run away, I don't think I initially thought I was running away from violence. I think in my age and where I was at in life, I think I was just really wanting to run away from the beatings. I was just wanting to run away from the feeling of fear, from the feeling of control and having someone have power over me. I was running away from that, but I didn't really have a word for it. Now we call it family violence.
Right. Wow. Okay. So a couple of things that you've mentioned is growing up. So it seems like even though the term wasn't normalized or labeled, it was something that you sort of perhaps were experiencing as you were growing up in your household. Would that be the case? And obviously, now looking back, what are some of the signs that you? Because I also am referring to that we've got your book as well, and I've sort of received this, and thank you for sharing your book. I mean, it's such how would I describe it? It is horrifically honest and triumphantly victorious.
Wow.
So that's and this came in the mail, was it yesterday? Grabbed it from the post, opened it, and then, well, this is the giveaway, and then this is my vision.
Wow.
And so it sort of gave me the first chapter. We can talk a little bit about the first chapter. You sort of plunged the reader right in. You plunged us right into your father. Now, would you mind talking a little bit about what you mentioned in the chapter 1?
I think with the writing of the book, I really, because I'm a Christian now, and so what I wanted to do is make sure that this book was not so Christianese that I was kind of alienates everyone else sort of thing. So I wanted to make sure that when I started the story, I started it right from the beginning and right from what it was like to live in a home with a father who was all these things, controlling, manipulative, very abusive, and I wanted to take the reader in, no matter what walk of life they were in, and have them feel like they were in the room with me and have them experience those things. So, my father, I have to say that the later years were definitely his better years. I think the beginning of my book kind of shows what it was like growing up in a home with a man who had all this brokenness, and then parenting us with his brokenness was horrific, and he just kind of unleashed he unleashed a really hard hand, and was emotionally, physically, and mentally quite abusive to us. But in saying that, and if I look at that and I look at it now, I can honestly say that it would have come from a place of his own hurt and his own brokenness, and in a place of where no one had taught him how to heal those things to be a better father. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm saying a lot of things. I'm like, I'll grab my book and have another read.
No, it is honouring your book, but it's also being very honest, isn't it? I mean, I definitely recognise that we're not looking back. We're not here to magnify, the past, but it's the journey that you've actually gone through that it will be really helpful for those who perhaps are still in that situation. Seeing you now and reading some of the chapters and the pages of just your lens from a childhood, from your childhood and then growing up. And then there was also a chapter that you mentioned about when your mum decided to actually perhaps make a stand, and so she wanted to move away from that situation I found it quite interesting, especially because sometimes we say, while we do have a village and we have a beautiful culture, that, it takes a village to raise a child. Sometimes, sadly, it's the same village that can also kill or, a child through neglect, And so I just wanted to read this really quickly because I found that was really timely in what we're talking about. And that's on page 48. And this is, people were coming and going from our home. I could hear my mother pleading her case to women who had said, "You shouldn't have said anything. This is your fault for speaking out, for embarrassing him." What was I hearing? Your fault? This brutal attack was her fault. There's obviously a little bit more, but I found that quite interesting when you're trying to speak up and, us women, we try to say something that's going on, and it's not always a good thing to do. The people around us probably want us to just be quiet, not say anything.
Yeah. So, it definitely, I know growing up in that and seeing that and looking for hope and thinking that you could find hope in, as you say, in others in the village. And it really was a shock to my system to see that the state that my mother was in at that time when she was kind of reaching out to other people was, you could see it. It was visual. Her pain was visual. The beating was visual. The swollen eyes, the mouth, the dried blood on her lips, everything was visual. Everything was right there for someone to be, to look at and say, you would hope would put their arms around them and say, what can we do to help? But it was absolutely different. It was, this is your fault. They did blame her, and it was a whole lot of, hide this, don't talk about it sort of stuff. And yet everyone knew it was going on. So that was the crazy part about growing up in a Samoan household, growing up in a Pacific Island household, the amount of secrecy that is placed there, and it I don't know if it's not there for us. It's more like the protection of the perpetrator almost, and it's protecting the perpetrator. It's this idea of, being proud. Let's not be proud of that. Let's hide that sort of stuff. And so seeing pride at a different level for me growing up was really hard.
Yeah. That's amazing. If you were to talk to your young self today, and for those who are young people that may be in this situation, what were some of the things that you advise them to do that perhaps would prevent them from going down? Because you've actually shared, you haven't really held back. There's some incredible parts to your story. You've gone from your childhood, the siblings, what it was like every day. The cake story was one, and then the car scenario was one. You've got all these sort of episodes, if you like. If it was a movie, it would be like this scene. You're at home, and then you're sort of running away, and then you're looking for your mum, and then you were looking for love. You're looking for love, and because obviously that was something that perhaps was missing at home. So you've got this array of, things to choose from. But if you're going to actually speak to yourself like your 18-year-old or your teenager year, thinking, no one gets me, does anyone see me? Yeah. Where am I going to get that love from? Yeah. Well, what would you perhaps say?
I think I would definitely say to my 18-year-old, the things that I never heard. When you're hearing that you're useless, that you're worthless, that you are nothing, that you're hopeless, you take that narrative with you, and it doesn't matter where you end up, where you go. You may move from a place physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, you're still back there. So, I would definitely tell my 18-year-old self the things that I didn't hear. I would say, you are worthy, you are beautiful, you are needed, you are valued, you are bold, you are strong, you're courageous. There is a place for you to belong. You are all these things that are deep within you. You just need someone to tell you. You just need to remind yourself that there is something great within you. I think I would be telling my 18-year-old is to dig deep, because there's some strengths and some things within you that are crying out to come out to the surface, so that, I could believe it and walk in that strength and walk in that courage. But I would definitely say, gosh, find God.
Yeah,
I would say you need to find God, and you need to, I know it sounds, and it's not something you want to hear, especially growing up in a home where religion was also used against us. I know that for a time I pushed God away. I didn't want anything to do with him. I hated him. But being where I am now, I know there is no way I could be who I am, where I am, get to do the things that I do without God's grace. There's no way. And so I just remind my 18-year-old self, there is a grace that is available, and it is a grace that would empower you for the here, for the now. It would empower you to walk out of that dark space. It would empower you to look forward, to look towards hope, to look towards the things that are ahead of us, the great and beautiful things that God has laid out for us. And that this pain that you're suffering, it will come to an end one day. You just got to look deep, got to dig deep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's stay on this topic, because, if I was to look at you and I read this book, it's very hard to fathom that you actually grew up this way. Do you get that sometimes?
All the time. I get it all the time. Yeah. And that's what I love about my faith. And I think that's where my faith has played a big part. That's what I love about my faith, because my faith has helped me do a lot of healing from the inside out. I think a lot of people on their healing journey, I think that the outside can look good, but when they start to speak, it starts to point to unresolved things within them, and it starts to point to bitterness and anger and all those sort of things. So I think that's why it's important to heal from the inside out, and that starts to kind of take over. But honestly, I get told it a lot, and I can only say it is because of God. There's no way I can take credit for any of that. He is my joy, he is my strength, he is the reason I can say some of the gritty, hard parts of my life and share those things, knowing and understanding that he's created something different within me. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. What actually, because we're talking about, just for those that don't know, so this is your book. It's called Grace Brought Me Here. What a great title. And this is exactly on the back of what you're saying. Grace brought you here today. If you were to look at your book now, what would be a chapter that you absolutely love that you also talk more about? Is it a little bit of everything, or is there a particular popular subject matter from your book that's really popular and that you get to share a lot about?
I think because the book was so new and the writing of it was so new, I think for me it would probably be a rewrite of more depth. I know it sounds crazy because it sounds pretty detailed already, but it's kind of written in a way where you're running with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm going from scene to scene. And I think for me to rewrite it would be to fill in the gaps of the in-betweens, of how it got to that point and how I got to that point. Because at the moment you read it and you're seen jumping a lot. But I think I did that on purpose to kind of grab as many people as I could into the book and into the space and as an audience. But I think I'd definitely take a longer journey. I think I would really re-look at maybe parts of my dad's life, and how he became to be who he was, and the beautiful ending of his life as well. How his later days did become his greater days. So it would be a mixture of all of them.
And I love that. It's not like we don't want to paint anyone bad, if you know what I mean. It's just that I like what you were saying about when you dig deeper about someone that is a perpetrator, whether it's our fathers or mothers or brothers or whoever's close to us, because often it's the people that are close to us that actually do this, don't they? It's often whether it's our partners or whether it's someone that we trust growing up. But I also like the fact that we're, with empathy and grace, you're able to look beyond the act of what your father was doing and then find out a little bit more about how he grew up, what his childhood was like. Yep. And I think that's also really important, because sometimes, we don't want to be pointing the finger and judging people just because we're on this side of family violence and the perpetrators on this. There's, I'm not sort of saying that.
I understand what you're saying. What I mean? We're not trying to excuse the perpetrator.
That's right.
We're not. But what we're trying to do is understand where he came from. And I think that's also really important as part of that healing journey.
That's right.
Because when you get to that part because so much of that you blame yourself. You blame yourself for everything. It's my fault for that. It's my fault for that. I did that. And I think it's important because if I didn't do that, then he wouldn't have responded that way. If I didn't do that, he wouldn't have reacted that way, or they wouldn't have done that. So I think it's part of that healing journey to understand that maybe my reactions triggered something, but honestly, it really isn't about. It really isn't about. Victim, pointing the finger type thing. Yeah. It really is. You have to kind of get to that point in your healing journey. It's not about him. It's about me. I like that you're saying that. Yeah. Because I just sort of want to put it out there that we're not here to say, oh, this is us here, the victim, and then that person's fault. But what I like about what you're saying as well, Lima, is that it's a journey. It's a healing journey of our own selves. It's our own truth. Yeah. It's what God enables us to go through, right? Yeah. So, and then we'll be able to look back and take the good, and there is good, isn't it? So how important is humor? How important is humor in the journey? You have to be able to have humor somewhere, you have to be able to laugh at things and be crazy about what goes on and what happened. And in saying that, I know that as Pacific Islanders, kind of taking about Pacific Islanders can have a habit of laughing at the wrong things, and Pacific Islanders can use humor to cover up pain. So it's kind of a fine line, and you kind of have to, make sure that you're not using your humor to cover up something that needs to be dealt with or needs to be healed, or you make little of that beating, or you make little of that situation. It's really important to make sure you got a good, healthy balance of where that humour comes in. But hey, as Pacific Islanders, that's the thing I love. It's just this immense amount of joy that can be found in our nature, in the way we interact with each other, and in our wit and our humour. Yeah, love it.
That is, and also not to take ourselves too seriously, and obviously know when it's serious and vice versa. But like you say, it's a balance, right? It is a hardcore subject. Let's not sort of, there's no embellishment or any glitter around it. It is what it is. It is. You're very brave. It takes a lot of courage to actually do this, don't you think? And are you finding that more women and just more of our own community members are coming out slowly? Are they, whereas before it's very like nothing.
Yeah, there's huge amounts of it. I know that when I started speaking on this topic 2 years ago, when I came back to New Zealand to do a talk on it, it was very rare to hear someone talking and sharing their stories. Whereas now I think people are getting braver and braver and beginning to talk about it more. But I think that's because it's not accepted. Family violence is not accepted, and it can't be swept under the rug. And it's more out there. It's giving people platforms to share, and the rise of social media gives people an out to start releasing some of the stuff. So it's really fantastic. I do have to say, however, one of the key things that I've realized when speaking is there are usually 3 points, and number one is definitely I feel that the story needs to be healed first. So heal your story before you start to spill your story, because as I said, when it's not healed, it'll point back to those unresolved pain and issues, and the hearer will then be left wondering, what do I do now? Especially if they're seeking help. So I think it's important to heal the story, because for a long time we were seeing hashtag real talk. I think we should swap it out and hashtag heal talk, because heal talk is more effective. Number two is, if you're going to share your story, remember that don't compare it. Because don't compare it to the person in front of you, the person behind you, the person who just shared. Don't compare your story, because when you start to do that, you undervalue the grace that it has taken God for your story to get to that point of where it is. And your story is relevant to who you are in your journey and to those around you.
Absolutely. You've just bang on. So I like that hashtag that you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because I was finding it a lot of hashtag real talk, and the more I dug into those people using it, the more I saw, no, there's something not right, and heal talk is definitely the way to go, because it points people back to hope, it points people back to our God, it points people to healing.
Yeah, that's great. And then the second one that you mentioned, so the hashtag, but also how important is it to seek the help? Because sometimes there's one thing to realize that we need the help, but then what are some of the steps should we be taking to then go seek the help, and who do we seek it from?
Yeah. So I think it's important that we do get to that point of seeking help, because it's always good to get people in on part of your journey. Who you go to for help is also important, because you want to be able to share your story with people that are safe, that are going to support you, that are not going to judge you. For me, I got the help of a counsellor to start the ball rolling, and I found that was so beneficial to kind of bursting the bubble, taking the top of the boil sort of thing, start to let it out a little bit. So counselling is good, but I think if you're again, it'll come back to you and your healing journey, and I'd say get all the help you can get. Be bold about getting your help. Remember, this is for you to heal. This is for generations that have come after you. So you get the help. Start talking to people. If you can write and it's safe to write, where the writing is not going to end up being a bad thing for you, if someone finds it, to just get your feelings out, then write. Start writing. Do whatever it can to start getting it out, because the more you get out, the more you start to realize and start to acknowledge exactly what it is that needs to be healed. Kind of takes the fluff off the story.
Absolutely. Great pointers. Yeah, that's great. That's really good. So whilst we're talking about what happened, it's also talking about, like exactly what you said, it's the pathway to start seeking help. And that's just, to begin your journey. And I also like what you're saying, because sometimes, we do compare. Sometimes we do find that we are riddled with shame or perhaps guilt, and we think, that we don't deserve, like you say, some of the things that you were encouraging people to, that we're worthy, that we're loved, that there is so much hope and love and a future, that God does have a plan for us. So, and not comparing, grace is infinite, isn't it? We're not going to run out. It's not like a pizza where there's 12 pieces of pizza and there's only grace available for 12 people. It is infinite, and it doesn't matter whether it's what age anyone may be going through. It is absolutely grace, compassion, empathy, and being able to encourage and support anyone out there that's going through. And it might be a higher power. Not everybody does have, whether you call it God or something else, but the thing is that no matter what color we are and what social economic background, family violence, abuse in all form, shapes, and all addictions comes under that one umbrella, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Especially now during lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. Family violence knows no boundaries. Rich, poor, coloured, white, whatever, it knows no boundaries. And so it's important that when you get to that point of being able to share your story, that you understand that regardless of what you think your story is, big, small, it's not big as hers, it's not bad as hers, it's still your story, and there is a reason for the God's grace, or for you to be graced with the and empowered to share that story, to actually heal that story and begin to share it, because I think that's the third point. Once it's healed and once you learn to not compare it, then it is time to start sharing it, because that sharing it says that story no longer belongs to you. It belongs
Absolutely.
to the people who are calling out for help, who are lost in those dark and broken places. Our stories belong to them. It empowers them to come out of those spaces, to give them hope. So once you get to that point, it's an amazing place to be, to understand that actually this story was meant for someone else.
Absolutely, love that, and which is why we're actually sharing this morning, aren't we? It's our stories is not for ourselves, and we never know who will be encouraging this morning. We may not even meet them in our lifetime, but our aim is to not only hear our voices, but to share our truth and our stories, our testimonies, to know that we used to be like this, and we may not be. We're not here to say that I'm an expert at the science of it, but it's through our own lens and what we've felt, what we've cried, the things that we've experienced in our lifetime, well, so far in our years and the decades that we've been on this planet. And also that there's another generation, and we want to, our desire is to break that cycle. How important is that to stop that generational, cycle from happening?
I can't stress how important it is. And even if you're just a young person now who doesn't perhaps think you'll have kids or think, want a family, somewhere down the line, you're going to need to make sure that you have healed and that you've been able to walk through that and that you're strong. Because if you get to that point, you ever come across it and it's in your face, then you know how to deal with it, then you know how to walk away from it, then you know how to recognize it, and you know how to show that to those coming, your young ones. Like with my 3 kids, I have to say that when we were living in Indonesia, they weren't exposed to any of this domestic violence talk, any domestic violence around them, and they weren't hearing people swear at each other. It was just not the environment that that they were, growing up in Indonesia. However, since being back in New Zealand, they're hearing it way more than they need to. They're hearing partners abusing each other in the car parking. They're hearing the neighbours throwing things and smashing windows. They're seeing it on the news that children have lost their lives, or women have lost their lives over domestic violence, and so they're seeing it so much more now. And so it's been vital that I remind them about these sort of things, and remind them, if you ever suspect that someone is being, getting hurt and you can't see it, call the police. If you think it's your friend, talk to them, encourage them to get help. If it's happening to you, my kids, if it's happening to you, come home, leave, leave that relationship, come back here, come where it's safe, and this is your safe place. There is no judgment, but protect yourself, protect those around you, and let it be known that you don't stand for it, don't tolerate it.
Absolutely, and that leads us to the bystanders. Sometimes we could be around people that perhaps have an inkling of what we may be going through, or maybe what our young people are going through, but they're just sort of like, sometimes it's like, well, I don't want to get involved because it's a family affair. I don't want to interfere. But sometimes it's just calling the police. We're not sort of saying that you're just going to barge in and insert yourself into that situation. It's just calling. Sometimes it's even calling the police. We don't want to be involved. It's not our problem. How important is bystanders and people that are. One of the things that we want to encourage in this talanoa is that we want to empower our bystanders to be everyday heroes. Sometimes it's just as simple as dialing 111.
And it really is. It's just, if I'm in that situation and I'm in the heat of the violence that's going on, there is a part of me that wants somebody to step in and be my strength. There's a part of me that wants somebody to pick up their phone and call help. Of course, if you're in that relationship and you're in that space, there's also a huge part that says, I don't want anything to happen to the perpetrator. I don't want to be taken from this place that I call normal. I don't want to be on my own. I don't want to, all these things. But there is also that part that says, I just want this violence to stop, even if it is just for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So call the police.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything.
Right.
I know we've got neighbours who are probably just fed up with us calling the police every time. But I'm just like, one day you're going to get sick of this. One day you're going to see that this is not the life you want. One day. But, I'm going to make sure to call the police to make sure you make it to that one day.
Absolutely.
Because violence is so scary now, where people are dying. So if I can do my bit for you to make it to that one day, and even if that one day feels like it's forever because you keep calling the police, you keep calling the police, or you keep talking to your friend, or you keep telling somebody, just leave, just leave, just leave. One day they will.
Yeah.
But let's help them get to that one day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can't stress that enough either. What's actually now, given now that you've come out the other end with your healing journey, you've written this book, what are some of the work or the projects, that you're now doing as a result of coming out and writing Grace Has Brought Me Here in your line of work now?
I have had such a blessed time with the book and everything that has snowballed and happened through the writing of this book, through the sharing of my story, and things that I would never have imagined, being invited to stand on platforms and speak to audiences that I would never ever have dreamed of doing, and sharing the things that I share. It's mind-blowing, to be invited to those circles where people are, talking about violence in very detailed ways, to speak to a group of women who just never talk about it at all, sort of thing. And it's just been, I'm so blessed. It always amazes me when I get an email or a phone call, or someone, is asking, would you be able to speak at this event on this topic? I just think, well, God, you do what you got to do, and you use me how you want to use me. But I've been able to advocate for the Pacific Island Women's Refuge. I'm able to be a part of different Pacifica groups as my journey now kind of goes into my Pacific Island side of things, and learning to use my language and learning my language to be able to speak on a platform with Pacific Islanders and kind of reach them with using language. So that's where I'm kind of at the moment. So I'm taking Samoan classes, and hence why I kind of started trying to do a beginning to this, a Samoan beginning, because I thought I've got to do this. I've got to give it a go. So that's where I'm at the moment, kind of using my language and my culture now, because it's such a big thing. So I've got to utilize that. I've got to make sure that it is a superpower, that my Pacific Island self can be brought to the arena, highlighting domestic violence.
Fantastic. And that's such a great, powerful story. It's a book, it's encouraging, it's inspiring, but also very authentic. Your voice is very authentic. Is there anything that you've been surprised, when you're going into these different audiences, were you surprised at anything? Were you surprised that you think, wow, I didn't realize these types of different groups or demographics or audiences would be sharing some of the things? Has anything surprised you and thought, didn't expect that one?
Definitely. I got invited to be a keynote speaker to an event that had a lot of government agencies. It had the police there. It had health physicians and a whole lot of well-being organizations and all that sort of stuff. And I sat in the audience and thought, what am I going to teach you? Because I'm pretty sure you all know what it is, all know more than I do. And I freaked out, and I thought, okay, you've done this many times, but never in this setting, and never with so many people on different levels who have all these letters behind their name, sort of thing. And I was becoming, the more I thought about it, the more I looked around, the more scared I got. I was getting really nervous. And 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 then when I jumped up on the stage, I realized and I was reminded that even with all of that, as I said before, and as we've talked about before, domestic violence knows no boundaries. It doesn't care about your PhDs. It doesn't care white or black or where you're from, where you work. I realized, hang on a second, there is something here. And I know I'm going to be able to talk to a large group of people in this room, and it's going to touch hearts. And so I remembered, it's the power of your story that's going to break this. And so that's me learning to value the power of my story, and that's me learning to stand on the stage and speak these things and say it. And when I looked around, I remember seeing so many people crying, and it's unusual because it's not church. And so to see all these people crying and to see men crying, that's always that always kind of that knocks me over, and I think, okay. But yeah, and then when they approach me afterwards and they start to share their own stories with me, I'm just really thankful. You know what, God, thank you that you are in my story, and that there is power to the story, and that it is valuable, regardless of how I feel or what the audience looks like. You'll still do what you need to do. And so to have people come up to me, especially men, who then start to share their stories and start to break down, I think it's massive. It's a big deal when a man stands in front of a complete stranger and starts crying, and starts to share their stories. I never take those moments for granted.
That's amazing.
Never.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our last question. We're having so much fun that we could actually talk for a long time, Lima. We haven't even delved into your book, but we are going to give your book away to anyone that would like to like, share, and subscribe. They'll get this free copy, and there will also be a link to your book. So I love it. Like I said, this is the nice version, and this is the messy version of all the different post-it notes, but it's called Grace Brought Me Here, and I just love it. Well done for sharing your story, for coming out and allowing God to use you, your experiences, and to honor your mum and dad, to honor your siblings. And what an incredible time in your life where you get to actually share and be vulnerable. That takes a lot of courage and bravery from you. And I'm just so blessed that you're able to come on. And we're also speaking to all people. We're inclusive, aren't we, Lima? It doesn't matter whether you
absolutely
a God follower or not. Yeah. So any final last words that you'd like to share before we say thank you and finish off in our Talanoa today?
I think just a real reminder that if this is something that you are experiencing, I just want you to know that there are so many of us that understand what you're going through, and that I understand that there are those days where you have the strength to walk to the door, and that's enough for that day. And there are those days where you have the strength to walk to a letterbox, and that's enough for that day. And then there's the strength where you can have to run down the road and still feel like fear is gripping you and you come straight back. I want you to know that I understand that. I understand those steps that you take, but I also want you to know that every little step counts. Every step you take towards the door, towards the letterbox, down the road, to free yourself from that, every step counts. So please don't feel hard on yourself. Please don't feel like you're a failure if you don't make it beyond the front door, if you don't make it beyond the letterbox. Please understand that is just part of getting stronger, so that eventually one day you're going to run out the door, past the letterbox, down the road, and you're not going to look back, because you understand your worth. And I want you to know that you are worthy, you are precious, you are amazing, and you can do this because it's already placed within you. You have the courage to do the things that you think you cannot do. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Lima, whaafitai tele lava mo le lau taimi whaavanoina. Whaafitai. Ia whaamanuia tele le atua. I le nei aso ma whiau mga luenga. I meise fo ila asang o nei vai aso. Whaafitai, soifua. Thank you so much.
Whaafitai tele lava, Marie, and thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you for listening to Hear Us Now. If you are in an abusive situation and in danger right now, please call the New Zealand Police on 111. Also see the show description for more information about how you can get help and start your healing journey. Thank you also to those who emailed us directly with their stories and how they appreciated Floris sharing her journey in episode 1. To help us reach more people, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell to be notified for future episodes. Thank you for watching and for listening. Until next time, caring is everyone's business.